Senator Harris, welcome to North Carolina. Thank you for putting yourself out there as a black woman in such a pivotal way. We see so much uncertainty in this moment, but one thing we are sure of is that leadership is needed. My question, the perception among many young black and brown voters is that a Biden-Harris ticket may not be reflective of a hard line on the true reforms necessary in our criminal justice and social economic systems. The better than 45 message alone, with 6 weeks to go, needs a sharper, hard line for the base of voters protesting in this moment right now. How will a Biden-Harris ticket move past the lesser of two evils narrative being used to promote them to young black voters and get in tune with the issue base of the criminal justice community?
I appreciate the question and the point. So first of all, the premise of your point is something I couldn't agree with more, which is we have to earn the votes. Nobody is supposed to vote for us. We need to earn it. The other point that I think you're raising is something that I agree profoundly with, which is let's step back and decide how we're going to declare a win and how we're measuring the win. How do we define the win? Because here's what I mean. If you define the win as just simply beating Donald Trump, then the job is over the day we get sworn in. But if you define the win as winning, to actually confront the issues, then the job begins the day we're sworn in. So I couldn't agree more with the spirit with which you make the point. Now, specifically on topic, I know as a former prosecutor, and let me give you the background on that. My parents met when they were active in the civil rights movement, marching and shouting. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative or friend, who has not been the subject of some form of racial profiling, unreasonable stop, or excessive force. I grew up understanding how the system works. And it was the very distrust that so many have today that propelled me to become a prosecutor, because I decided, well, there are many ways to deal with the system. I'm going to choose to go in the system to see if I can't help reform it from the inside, which is why I created some of the first in the nation initiatives. For example, one that focused on young men who were arrested for drug sales and getting them jobs and counseling. It became a national model. So I'm committed to this. This is part of my life's work. Joe and I are very specific about what we will do as a start. Ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if they had been banned. We will create a national policy for a standard for use of force. What's that about? Well, excessive force right now, when it happens, in many jurisdictions, the question to ask is, was that use of force reasonable? Well, as we all know, you could reason away just about anything. The more fair and just question to ask is, was that use of force necessary? Joe and I also have a plan to have a national registry around police officers who have broken the law. Why? Because in many places where there has been excessive force, as an example, because the burden to prove it, see the earlier point I made, is so high, sometimes those cases just go by administrative process. So there's an administrative process and the person gets fired. Well, there's nothing that then follows that person when they move to a different jurisdiction and go get hired there. So we're talking about a national registry. We intend to get rid of the federal death penalty, to decriminalize marijuana and expunge people's records who have been convicted, and to get rid of the private prisons. Why is that important? Because let's be clear about the business model on the private prisons. And this also relates, brother, to the private detention centers. The business model there is that certain human beings are making money off the incarceration of other human beings. Right? So these are some of the specific things that we will do as a start. But there is a lot of work to be done. When I do national news, press conferences, whatever, I say, look, I know, having worked inside the system, we have to reimagine public safety and how we do public safety in our country. Because here's the thing. You go into any upper middle class suburb in America, you will not see the kind of police presence you see in other communities. But what you will see, well-funded public schools, high rates of home ownership, access to capital for small businesses, people who have jobs that allow them to get through the end of the month without worrying about whether they can feed their children, access to health care, including mental health care, that is affordable. Healthy communities are safe communities. And so that's part of what Joe and I am talking about. So when the conversation we had about access to capital, you know, I didn't even get into, I was at Shaw earlier. That was my first trip, my first visit when I came to the state this morning. But I'm a proud graduate of an HBCU, Howard University, yes. I don't have any bison here, not one, huh? But we also are going to put $70 billion into HBCUs. 70. Because we know our HBCUs, like Shaw, and so many, North Carolina has the largest number of HBCU students of any state. We know that that is a pathway to national and international leaders in all the professions. And part of that $70 billion is also about investing, you know, because the question about young leadership, right? Investing in so many of our HBCUs that have research components, right? Because we want to have a presence when we're talking about researching and figuring out how we're going to develop things like AI. You know what AI is? Artificial intelligence. You know, the other way you can think of it is machine learning. Let's break that down for a minute because it's so important. Machine learning. Machine learning, the educators know that often what you learn is a function of who's teaching you. So the machine is going to learn based on who's teaching it. We need to make sure everyone is present in teaching the machine how it makes decisions about who does what and who can do what. Investing in HBCUs around things like research and development, it'll have a profound impact. So these are some of the ways that we think about it that are about the criminal justice system, but it is also about the investment that we need to make in healthy communities. I talked about home ownership. Again, North Carolina, you know the history of redlining, the history of folks being denied access even when they built up and saved the capital to being able to buy in neighborhoods where they would appreciate the value of their home. We're talking about a $15,000 tax credit, and this is again for young leaders, a $15,000 tax credit for new homeowners to help for down payments and closing costs. Because especially for us, and for most Americans, home ownership is their greatest source of wealth and intergenerational wealth, right? But we need to give people a leg up on being able to actually just close on that place to develop that intergenerational wealth. So those are some of the things. And I appreciate you.